Life on Mars, 19th century. What did the people think? Well, this newspaper from 1875 is going to tell us what they thought they knew about life on Mars. Let's read and figure it out. A world like ours with water, wrong. Air, wrong. Heat, I suppose. Light, true. Winds, clouds. I guess clouds? I'm not sure they have clouds. Rain, wrong. Rivulets. I don't know. Valleys and mountains. I think they're batting at about 50-50 with being right and wrong here. When 12 years ago I published the first edition of my work, La Pinrolite des Mondes, this is translated from French, I did hope to see the speedy confirmation which the progress of astronomy would give to my theory in enabling us to touch with the finger, as it were, the manifestations of planetary life. On the one hand, the aerolites, those samples of other worlds, have brought in their own substance the elements which play the most important part in life, like oxygen, hydrogen, carbon, chlorure of sodium, chlorure, 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 salt. He's just talking about salt. The aerolite which fell, the orgueil, brought us coal-like matter, carbures, which, like peat, are due to vegetable remains. That which fell in 1872 at Lance, Loire et Coire, brought salt. Aerolites had already brought water under the form of hydrate of oxide of iron. So what is an aerolite? It makes it sound like aerolites are like comets or meteors. A-E-R-O-L-I-T-E. Aerolite meteor. Okay, so it's a meteor. Yeah. Meteors! The worlds from which these debris come do not differ from ours. On the other hand, through the spectral analysis, vapor of water identical with that which produces our fogs, our clouds, and our rains has been discovered in the planetary atmosphere. Has it, though? What were they seeing? Because we know today that there's no water on Mars, clearly. But so what is it that they saw that they thought was rain, water vapor? But all of the studies lately made that which offers us the most general confirmation of the existence of life beyond the Earth is the telescopic examination of the planet Mars. This neighboring world indeed presents relations most similar to ours. By its situation, we are called to observe its surface under the best conditions for its study, and the telescope reveals the configurations which indicate the closest affinity between that globe and the one that we inhabit. It is by the continuous persevering study of the movement of Mars that Kepler discovered the immortal laws which control the system of the world. It seems to me certain that it is by the study of the same planet that will first be confirmed the doctrine of the plurality of worlds, the philosophical crowning achievement of astronomy. By this double service, Mars would deserve the esteem of thinking humanity, and perhaps would cause us to pardon the follies and the cruelties with which the god of war has inspired for too long a time this poor humanity that peoples the earth. Led by the persevering desire to find in practical astronomy itself the direct evidence of this great proof of the plurality of worlds, I particularly devoted myself to the observation of the planet Mars. Sometimes words are hard to say. I think speaking itself in anything other than a grunt is hard for us. Honestly, words they're tough. They're tough. I especially studied it at the periods when it passed in the neighborhood of the Earth, and above all last year. Comparing between them the observations made at different epochs by astronomers, I succeeded in collecting, in reference to it, numerous and decisive documents. The results of these observations and these discussions are satisfactory for the solution of the curious problem of the condition of life on the surface of the planets. So we're coming up on the bottom of the page here. Maybe I should add an effect of like a whoosh to the top of the next part of the article. Our readers know that the planet Mars is that which comes next to the Earth in the order of distances from the Sun. Our orbit is traced at 37 million leagues from the orb of day, and that of Mars at 56 million. When the two planets are on the same side of the sun, the distance which separates them is therefore only 19 million leagues, and it may even descend to 14 million, because neither Mars nor the Earth follows a perfect circumference, their distances from the sun increasing or diminishing according to the periods. That which most strikes the observer in the examination of the planet is this, that the poles are marked like those of the Earth by two white zones, two caps of snow. Let's look at Mars. Does Mars have snow? Snow occurs only at the coldest extremes of Mars, at the poles, under cloud cover, and at night. Oh, shit! So, Mars does have clouds. So there is snow on Mars. Fuck me running. That's fascinating. What's the difference between water and lava? It's temperature. I think after I make a point or say something stupid, I should always just go. Moving on. The North Pole and the South Pole are even at times so brilliant that they seem to extend beyond the edge of the planet, following that effect of iridation which renders a white circle larger to our eyes than a black circle of the same dimensions. The ices vary in extent. They heap themselves in piles and extend around each pole during the winter, while in the summer they melt and retire. In their totality, they extend farther than do ours, and sometimes descend to the 45th degree of latitude, or as far as those regions which correspond to the situation of France on the Earth. The first aspect of the planet makes it seem analogous to ours as regards the division of its climates into frigid, temperate, and torrid zones. The examination of its topography shows us, on the contrary, a sufficiently characteristic dissimilarity between its configuration and that of our globe. Fucking fancy pants writer with so many syllables. Man, he must have been a genius. In fact, there are more seas than lands on the Earth. 3/4 of the globe are covered with water. Terra firma is composed principally of 3 vast islands, 3 continents, one extending from the west to the east, and forming Europe and Asia. The second placed to the south of Europe and forming Africa. The third stretching on the other side of the globe, from above to below, from the north to the south, and forming the great territories of America. If the small continent of Australia, situated south of Asia, be added, we have the configuration of the globe. I don't know. It is not the same with the surface of Mars, notwithstanding the comparisons which astronomers have often sought to apply to its continental and oceanic divisions. The water does not cover 3/4 of Mars. There are more lands than seas there, and instead of being islands emerging from the bosom of the liquid element, continents seem rather to reduce the oceans to simple interior seas, veritable Mediterraneans. There is there no Atlantic or Pacific, and the tour of Mars might almost be made on dry land. The seas are Mediterraneans, cut up into various gulfs, prolonged here and there in a great number of arms, stretching like our Red Sea across terra firma. Such is the principal feature of the geography of Mars. Interesting. So what are they looking at? Why did people think that there was water on Mars? Why did the 19th century think Mars had water? Back in the 19th century, Giovanni Schiaparelli peered through his telescope and spied networks of channels on the planet. The similarity to the water courses on Earth is striking. Ever since this discovery, scientists suspected that Mars could have had liquid water on its surface. So I guess they're just, maybe they don't necessarily see the water, but they're seeing the sort of channels, the reservoirs where water would be in their minds. Another feature which also would suffice for the recognition of Mars from a long distance is this, that the seas are extended in the southern hemisphere between the equator and the pole on one side. On another side, they extend to a less extent in the northern hemisphere. Further, these southern and northern seas are united by these arms of the sea, tending from the south to the north. The continents of Mars are tinted of a red ochre hue, and its seas present themselves to our gaze under the aspects of spots of a gray-green, deepened by an effect of contrast due to the color of the continents. The coloration of Mars is not due to its atmosphere, for although the veil extends over the whole planet, neither its seas nor its polar snows yield to the influence of this coloration. Moreover, the borders of the planet are less colored than the center of the disk, a result which would not be if this coloration was due to the atmosphere. Fucking 19th century grammar got me fucked up. May not this characteristic color of Mars, visible to the naked eye, and which doubtless is the cause of the warlike individuality which the ancients conferred on this planet, be due to the color of the herbage and of the vegetables which must cover its champaigns? Are there red prairies, red forests, red fields there? Are our silent woods with their soft shadows replaced with trees bearing rubicund foliage? Rubicand. Ruddy complexion, high-colored. Got it. So, they know that Mars is red, but they think that there are forests there with water. I'm kind of looking forward to what they think these people look like. I'm just trying to think of like a 19th century person, and would they project our own physical features and think that's what these Martians must look like? At least very similar. I hope to find out in this article. It may be remarked, in fact, that an observer placed on the moon or even on Venus would see our continent strongly tinted with the greenish shade. But in autumn, he would see this shade vanish in the latitudes where the trees lose their leaves. He would see the fields vary in shades to a golden yellow, and then the snow would cover the ground for months at a time. On Mars, the coloration is constant, and it is observed in all its latitudes during their winter as well as during their summer. It varies only according to the transparency of its atmosphere and of ours. This, however, is no reason why the vegetation of Mars should not be the principal cause of this general shade. The plains cannot be denuded. I know that the dictionary is filled with thousands of words, but you don't have to use them all. D-E-N-U-D-E-D. Denude. Strip something of its covering, possessions, or assets. Make bare. Is that where the word nude comes in? I mean, like, hey, let's all hang out together in the nude. They are probably covered with a vegetation of some kind, and as it is not the interior of the soil that we see, but its surface, it must follow that the covering of this soil, the vegetation, whatever it be, has red for its chief color, since all the lands of Mars offer this curious aspect. The wonderful operations of the spectroscope have been applied to the study of the planets, principally by the learned English physicist Huggins. The planets reflect the light which they receive from the sun. When the spectrum of their light is examined, the solar spectrum is found as though it were reflected in a mirror. I love this. I love the 19th century, and they're figuring stuff out. Think about, like, you're sitting down, it's the 18th century, it's 1875, you're having a cup of coffee, your wife is in the kitchen where she should be, making your coffee and breakfast, and you're reading the newspaper, and you're thinking about the people of Mars. In your head, you have no idea that there's actually nobody there, but you think there are people there, and that there's life. They have crops, they have water, everything is irrigated. As far as you know, I mean, there's life there. Are they sitting down having coffee? Is there Martian coffee? Do they have markets? Do they have music? Do they have art? What do they have? What are the Martians doing? Do the Martians have astronomers? Are they looking at Earth? Do they speculate themselves? I mean, they must, about what the humans are doing. Or what do they even call Earth? What do the Martians call Earth? Friggin' fascinating. On directing the spectroscope to Mars, there was noticed in the first place, in the rays emitted by this planet, a perfect identity which those which emanate from the central orb of our system. But in making use of more minute methods, Mr. Huggins found, during the last oppositions of the planet that the spectrum of Mars is crossed in the orange zone by a group of black rays coinciding with the lines which appear in the solar spectrum at the setting of the sun, when the light of that luminary crosses the densest layers of our atmosphere, and thus verified the existence of water in the atmosphere of Mars, as water exists in ours. The green spots of that globe are indeed seas, reaches of water analogous to terrestrial waters. The clouds are vesicles of water like those of our clouds. The snows of water solidified by cold. More than this water revealed by the spectroscope being of the same chemical composition as ours. We know in addition that oxygen and hydrogen are also there. Interesting. I wonder what the periodical table of elements looked like in 1875. Bam! These important documents allow us to form an idea of the meteorology of Mars and to see it in a very similar reproduction of that of the planet which we inhabit. On Mars, as on the Earth, in fact, the sun is the supreme agent of movement and of life, and its action determines these results, analogous to those which exist here. Heat vaporizes the water of the seas of Mars and lifts it into the heights of the atmosphere. This vapor of water assumes a visible form through the same process which gives birth to our clouds, that is to say, by the differences of temperature and of saturation. So smart and so wrong at the same time. I mean, they're doing what they can. They're figuring stuff out. The winds arise from the same differences of temperature. The clouds may be carried by the aerial currents over the seas and the continents, and many observations have already photographed, so to speak, these meteorological variations. If we do not yet precisely see the rainfall on the plains of Mars, its fall is divined at least, since the shadows disappear and are renewed. If also the snow be not seen to fall, its fall is divined in like manner, since, as with us, the winter solstice there is surrounded with frost. Thus there is there, as here, an atmospheric circulation, and the drop of water which the sun takes from the sea returns to it after having fallen from the cloud which absorbed it. More than this, although we should hold ourselves strenuously on guard against all tendencies to create imaginary worlds fashioned after our own, yet Mars presents us, as in mirror, with such an organic similitude that it is difficult not to go a little farther in our description. So they are cognizant of projecting what we have here on Earth onto Mars. There is that thought in their head, and they are cautious against it, which is great. In fact, the existence of the continents and of the seas shows us that the planet was, like ours, the seat of internal geological movements which gave birth to upheavals and depressions of the soil. There have been eruptions and shakings there, modifying the primitive crust of the globe. In consequence, there are mountains there and valleys, plateaus and hollows, steep ravines and cliffs. How do the pluvial waters return to the sea? By means of springs, rivulets, streams, and great rivers. Thus, it is difficult not to see, on Mars, scenes analogous to those which constitute our terrestrial country scenes. Babbling rivulets flowing in their pebbly beds, gilded by the sun. Streams crossing the plains or falling in cataracts to the bottom of the valleys. Great rivers descending slowly into the deep seas, etc. Thus, then, behold, in space a few million leagues hence a land nearly the same as ours, where all the elements of life are united as they are around us. Water, air, heat, light, winds, clouds, rain, rivulets, valleys, mountains. To complete the resemblance, we will remark, furthermore, that the seasons there have nearly the same intensity as on the Earth, the axis of rotation of Mars being at the inclination of 27 degrees. The Earth's inclination is 23 degrees. In view of this ensemble, is it possible to pause for a single instant at the verification of these elements and of these movements without thinking of the effects which produce them, and which they should produce? The physico-chemical conditions which gave birth to the first vegetation which appeared on the surface of our globe being realized over yonder, as here, how could they exist together without producing similar results? On that scientific pretext, Could we imagine the arbitrary prevention of a realization of these results? It would require, in effect, an incomprehensible interdiction, a supreme veto, something like a permanent miracle of annihilation to prevent the rays of the sun, the air, the water, and the earth, these four elements which the ancients deified, from entering there constantly in the organic evolution, while here the smallest drop of water is inhabited by myriads of animalcules, microscopic animal. Okay, great. As long as the ocean is the home of thousands of vegetable and animal species, what efforts against reason would not be necessary to imagine that amid similar vital conditions, the world which we are discussing could remain forever in the condition of a vast and useless desert? The mean density of the materials which compose Mars is less than that of the constituting materials of our globe. It is as 71 to 100. It results from this density and from the dimensions of Mars that the weight of bodies is extremely light on its surface. So, dang, man, the astronomers of this day are, they're pretty darn good. There's a lot that you can learn by just observing with regular telescopes and solid math. So, kick ass. Thus, the intensity of weight being represented by 100 on the surface of Earth, it is only 38 on the surface of Mars. It is the most feeble intensity of weight that can be found on all the planets of the great solar republic. I love that name, the Solar Republic. I think that is what we should now call our solar system. It is not the solar system, it is the Solar Republic. Makes it sound like, Star Wars or something. So if humans are the only intelligent species in this solar system, do we own the other planets? Do we have claim? What does ownership mean to, some of the other intelligent species that must be out there in the universe? How do they see ownership of other planets? It's probably based on ability to actually utilize the resources on these other planets, the ability to get there. But anyway, from now on, I'm going to call the solar system the Solar Republic because I dig it. As a result, 1 terrestrial kilogram transported thither would weigh no more than 382 grams. A man weighing 70 kilograms transported to Mars would not weigh there 27. It would not be more fatiguing to run 50 kilometers there than to run 20 on the Earth. And the muscular effort, the exercise of which has caused the invention of the schoolboy's game of leapfrog, would enable one to leap on Mars, not only over the backs of his companions, but also over the roofs of houses and the tops of trees. So I guess we see here that the Princess of Mars, that old book that inspired the John Carter movie series, that he was operating on pretty good information, I'd say. To the data which precede, let us add those which constitute the periods of life, the duration of the day and that of the year. The rotation of that planet on its axis is effected in 24 hours, 37 minutes, 22 seconds. Day and night there are therefore slightly different from ours as regards duration, and they vary, as they do here according to seasons. Being longer in summer than in winter, according to the latitudes, the year of Mars is nearly double that of ours, for its numbers 687 of our days. And finally, we get to the actual Martians themselves. Let's hear it. What do they think of these people? The inhabitants of Mars see the heavens, the constellations, absolutely as we see them. The Earth on which we are is for them a brilliant star, which now shines in the west after the setting of the sun, and now precedes, like a forerunner, the rising of the radiant luminary. It offers to them phases as Venus offers them to us. In a word, we are their shepherd's star, the most brilliant and most magnificent of their starry firmament. Perhaps they may even raise altars to us. Oh man! And again, you're sitting down, you're drinking your coffee, you're reading the newspaper, and you're like, man, there are Martians out there, and you're taking it as a given at this point. There are people on Mars in your mind. If they could come a little nearer, they doubtless would be greatly surprised at our little troubles. Such is the general physiognomy of this neighboring planet. The atmosphere that surrounds it, the waters that irrigate and fertilize it, the sun's rays that heat and illumine it, the winds that sweep over it from one end to the other, the seasons which transform it, are so many elements to construct for it an order of life analogous to that which our planet is blessed. The feebleness of the weight on its surface must have particularly modified this order of life in rendering it appropriate to its special condition. Thus, then, the globe of Mars should no longer appear to us like a block of stone, turning in space in the sling of the solar attraction, a sterile and an inert and inanimate mass. But we should see it in a living world, peopled with unnumbered beings, vaulting in their atmosphere and adorned with country places, where the murmur of the wind is heard and the water reflects the light of the heaven. A new world which no Columbus shall ever reach, but on which, nevertheless, a whole race now lives, works, thinks, and ponders as we do, doubtless the great and mysterious problems of nature. Camille Flammarion. Now don't say never, because it looks like we could be there in a couple of years. Now, obviously, there's not going to be anyone there to greet our astronauts, but still, it's curious to think what someone from the 19th century thought our limitations are or would be. Never is a long time. I mean, there were other things at that time. The Morse code, they had electricity. They had already come a long way with locomotion, steam-powered stuff. We had flight in the form of airships. And so to say that we would never get there, it's just, I would love to have a conversation, sit down and say, well, why do you think we will never get there? Anyway, there's not too much more I think I can add to this. I think I'm going to call it. Peace.